Hi everyone, it's Kelly from Kellie's Bead Boutique. So I've been making and teaching how to make jewelry for a very long time now. And one of the things that I hear all the time is, you make it look so easy. Well, that's because I think it is. So I'm going to take some simple parts and some simple techniques, and I'm going to teach you how to make your very own jewelry. So if you want to see what I'm making today, come and join me. So for today's video, we are going to be using a few different parts. We've got two pieces of 2mm leather, and these are both cut about 11 inches. So if you buy this in a kit, because this one will be available in kit, and you can also buy the parts separately. But if you do buy a kit, make sure that you take your piece and cut it in half, because you'll get 22 inches of leather, and we need two pieces. I'm also going to use some of these beautiful new hibiscus flower beads I just got in. I think they're so gorgeous. I also have some little, I think these are about a 3x5 or maybe a 5x7. No, I think they're about a 3x5 check glass, just a little accent bead. And then we also have some balled up head pins, some ear wires, and I have a couple different sizes of bead caps just for some decorative purposes there. So as far as tools, we're going to be needing a ruler and our ever-present barrel knot tube, and our four basic tools. We've got our round nose pliers, our chain nose pliers, our bent chain nose pliers, and a pair of cutters. And we're also going to need a little bit of GS Hypo cement. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make our little beaded parts, because we need those on there first. So I'm just going to pop on one of these gorgeous hibiscus flowers. And I'm not sure what the code is on these, but these will also be available for sale on the website if you're interested in buying your own. So now I'm going to put on one of these little flower bead caps. And then I have these small little bead caps. They're very thin, but they just add just a little bit of an extra touch. And I'm all about adding just those little extra touches on things just to, you know, jazz it up a little tiny bit. It doesn't do a lot. It just kind of gives it a little bit of a framework there. Now I want to make a nice wrap on this. You know, normally I like to try to do those messy wraps, but on this one, I'm actually going to make a really super nice wrap. So I want to take my very front of my pliers and put them on the wire there. Get that out of the way so that you can see what I'm doing. And I don't want to do this, because if I did, then I'm going to have a great big huge neck. So I'm just going to go down to the very end, as low down as I can go, so I can have a tiny neck. Now I'm going to take it and make the tool parallel to the table, and I'm going to bend away. So now we've created a nice little 90-degree angle. So now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to place them on the wire. And I do want to make sure that I'm creating a loop that's big enough to accommodate the leather. So I want to come up enough so you can see that's just a little bit bigger than what the leather is. So on yours, if you don't have a long nose like mine, you might have to come up towards the end. Okay, so now I'm going to take my finger from behind and push straight up and over, and then take my thumb and go straight down. Now I'm going to open up my pliers, rotate them so they're parallel to the table, and then I'm going to bring that tail straight to the back. So you can see that I was really forming that on there. I want to make sure that I have a nice tight wrap on there. And now I want to rotate that a little bit so that it's sitting right on top of itself like a little lollipop. Now we're going to take our pliers and place them right across there. And now the first part is the most important part, getting that first little wrap sort of tightly wound around there. Now I do find when we only have that little tiny bit, it's hard to do with your fingers. So grab the tail end of the wire with your pliers, your bent chain nose pliers, and always just grab the very end. So I always say take the tip of the wire and the tip of the tool. And I'm going to sort of pull that around to get that locked in. And you can see how that locked that in there nice and tight. And then I let go when I came around. So let go. Not only is it easier on your arms, or your hands, not to pull it around and around, but when you pull it around without letting go, you can run the risk of breaking your wire. Okay, so we've got our nice neat wraps. And then I'm going to take my cutters and turn it onto the flush side and just come in here and give it a little trim. Now you will have a little bit of a burr left over. So it's probably the easiest way for me to show you is like that. You can see that it's coming out there. And then I'm going to come in with my pliers and just kind of squish that down a little bit. I don't want to get too close to that bead because that is glass. So, but now you can see that we've got a really nice wrapped loop, and it is going to go this direction. So if you don't like that coming to the front, you can turn it around and you'll have that. So that's exactly what you want. Now, if it's tilting a little bit, you just kind of straighten it out, and there we go. Right, now that we've got our beautiful little flower charm at the bottom, we're going to create our little knotted area. So the first thing you want to make sure that you do is put your flower charm on first. Okay, so we're going to put that on. And then I'm going to pull this bottom piece out about 3 inches. So I'm just going to kind of measure, and now it doesn't have to be exact, but that's about the amount that I want to pull through. So I've got my charm at about the 3-inch mark, and then I'm going to rotate it so that it goes back and just leaves a little bit out of the end. Okay, it's going to be a lot of fingers in the way, so you're going to have to bear with me, and hopefully we can get through this together. So I've got a little loop here like that, and now I'm going to create a barrel knot. So I'm just going to place that there. You just kind of, manhandle it, and you can get it all into position after the fact. So I want to make sure that my long piece is on top like always, and I've just got that looped underneath, so you can probably see now that the tail's coming out there. I've just got a loop. Now I'm going to wrap towards my left thumb, and I'm going to go 3 full times around. So now you're going to be able to see a little better because I've got a little bit wrapped around there. Makes it a bit easier to see. Okay, so I'm going to now take that tail and put it through the back end of my tube. And then I'm going to pull the tube out, and then you'll see where that came out. And I'm just going to pull it so that I can show you what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so this is like a double barrel knot. So it's a little bit different than what I normally do in that if I was just to tighten this one up, taking this long one that we pulled through, if I was to tighten that all the way up, you'd have uneven links, and we don't want to have that. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and make this approximately 1 inch long. And you can see right now it's about 1.25 inches. So there's sort of some mechanics to think about. Now, if I want to make this loop a little bit smaller, I can't just pull this, because you can see it pulls that loop right through. So you kind of have to go backwards like you do if you're trying to tighten up your shoelaces. So you're going to try and figure out which one of these loops makes this one smaller. So you can see that if I pull on this one here, so not the one that's got the tail, but the one that's right here. Get my fingers out of the way there and pull. You can see how much smaller that makes that. So I want my loop about that large. And now I have to make this one smaller. So I'm going to pull that one. And you can see that now it made that one a little bit bigger. So you kind of have to go back and forth a little bit. So you just kind of pull, and then I find if you kind of hold on to this a bit and pull at the same time, it will sort of work. You kind of just have to play around with it a bit. Now this is just about 1 inch long. So I'm going to take this long one on the right here, and I'm going to tighten that up. So I find the best thing is to kind of take my thumb, like I normally, when I make these all the time in all my videos, I take my thumbnail and I place it about where I want this to be tightened up. So I'm going to get this tightened up a bit just to kind of get this into position. And I can pull this way too. Now we can see that that is just a little bit bigger than I want it. So now we can sort of pull and push to get it where we want. So I want to pull this one, and that is making that smaller. And then I'm going to pull this one, and it makes that one smaller. So there we go. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to kind of twist this to the direction that I want. Now I'm going to take this long one and tighten it up one more time, and I'm really pulling on it. And now it's made it just a little bit, ever so slightly off center. You can see that this one's a lot smaller than this one. So I'm going to I want this one a little bit smaller on the top, just a tiny bit. There we go. But I want this one a little bit bigger. So I'm going to just pull backwards. And you just kind of have to, there we go. You just kind of have to sort of play with it a little bit. But it does go. You just kind of have to monkey around. And then I'm going to pull that tight again and see if that one's, yeah, that's exactly what I want. So you'll end up with something that looks like this. Let me just get rid of my ruler. Okay, so now we have our little sort of double barrel knot, and we've got our beautiful flower hanging below. So now what I'm going to do is come in here and trim these off. So now you want to make sure before you do any kind of cutting that this is about as snug as you can get it. So I'm really pulling on that and getting it exactly where I want. I want to make sure that my barrel knot is nice and stacked next to each other. And you'll see that on one side you get kind of 2.5, and on the other you get like sort of 2 3/4. You can choose whatever side you want to show on the front of your earring. You know, it doesn't really matter. So now I want to take this part and pull it back and isolate and use the flush side of my cutters and get right in there and trim that off. And then I'm going to repeat on the other side. So I want to sort of pull that out of the way, and that's so that we can get that cut as close as possible. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a little trick. If you don't like the color of this showing, like it is dyed leather, so you're going to see the inside. I've just grabbed a little Sharpie and I'm just going to kind of dot on top of that. And then it kind of makes it a little bit darker and you don't see that. If you don't do it, it doesn't matter. I sometimes do it, sometimes I don't. It just depends on the feel. On this one, I probably wouldn't, but if you are one of those people that does not like to see anything that doesn't look like it's supposed to be there, then, you know, maybe you'll want to learn how to do that little trick. Okay, so now I want to make sure that I am getting enough glue on here so that this doesn't come apart, because this does not tighten up all the way. So I want to put a little dab on top of that. So you want to make sure you have glue on both sides there. And then I'm going to flip it over, find that other little cut end, and then just glue there. And now we're just going to set that aside and let it dry. All right, so this has had a chance to dry. Now you want to make sure that you use a glue that doesn't show too much. We want to show the beauty of the leather and not the glue. So you don't, it's kind of that, you know, thing where you want to use enough but not too much. Okay, so I'm going to take my ear wire and I'm just going to place my pliers across and open it up something like a jump ring. And I'm going to slip that on and I'm going to tighten that up. And you just kind of tighten it up by jiggling it back and forth. You don't want to distress your leather at all. And there we go. So I'm just going to finish the second one off of camera and I'll be right back. So there you go. There are our double barrel knot earrings. I think these ones are so cute and they're a lot easier to make than I probably made it look. You know, sometimes when you're showing how to do these things with the leather and it's such a small little piece, you get all your thumbs in the way and all that sort of stuff. So it's super, super simple to throw together. It's great if you have little scrap pieces of leather and you don't need a whole lot to create the bottom here. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to give me a like, leave me a comment, and make sure to subscribe to my channel. This will be available in kit form. You just go down to the description box below the video and there will be a link that will take you directly to my fully secure website at www.kelliesbeadboutique.com. All right, so to make our piece today, we're going to be starting with some Fireline, and I'm using the 6-pound in the smoke color. I'm also going to be using some, this is called California Pink, and this is SuperDuo. And I have a size 11. This is a galvanized rose, and I thought they went so pretty together. I've got some cord ends from Tierra Cast and some little ear wires. We're also using 2mm leather today, and these are, I'm going to be giving you, if you buy a kit, you're going to get about 6 inches and you'll just cut it in half, and so I already had pre-cut that. And for tools, we're going to be using a pair of pliers and a pair of cutters, and I'm going to probably use a thread zapper at the end. A little bit of GS Hypo cement or whatever kind of glue you have actually will work fine on this. And we're going to be using a needle today. And this is just a pony needle. It is a size 10. Now this is something that we won't be including in the kit because most people have needles. If you don't, I will make sure to put a link to our needles. You can use any kind, a big eye needle or whatever you like. I have vision problems and I find it really hard to get Fireline through that hole there, but I'll show you a little trick that I've learned to do along the way. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is cut ourselves some Fireline. So again, if you buy a kit, you're going to get about 40 inches or so. And I would, you could use just one long piece if you want, or you could cut it in two. I find it easier to only have to thread once because threading is kind of a pain in the butt. So what I like to do is take my piece and cut it. Now, the other thing I got asked the other day is what is the best tool to cut your Fireline? Well, I have these fabulous old Softflex cutters that I just can't kill these things. They're so good. But Fireline's really, really hard to cut, and you can actually wreck your scissors with them or your cutters. So I suggest having a pair of really good cutters or scissors that you only use for fireline. And I often will cut right down at this part on my scissors because it does tend to blunt out your scissors after a while. So they're not really, like, don't use your cutters that you like to use for wire work because you may wreck them. But because fireline's a really good product, but it can kind of be hard on your tools. So you can see now when I don't know if you'll be able to see on there, but there's like almost like a little knob on the end that happens when you cut it. So I like to take my pliers, and actually if you have a pair of a chain nose or the flat nose, and you just run the little end on there. Well, you can see how that has flattened it out. And now when you take that, I won't be able to do this on camera because, again, my vision is so bad that it literally takes me about 10 minutes to thread a needle. I might get lucky right now, but yeah, see, I can barely see that. But normally, if you have no vision problems, you can just take that and just pop it right in there. Yeah, there's no way that's happening for me today, but that's the way that you can do it. So I have to take about 10 minutes to get it on there. So once I get mine on there, I will be right back. All right, so now I got my fire line through my needle, and you can see that I've bent my needle because I use my needles over and over again. It doesn't make any difference if your needle is all bent up. Just keep using it until you can't use it any longer. Economize. So one of the things I have learned is to not pull very much through on the end, just a few inches, because it can start to wrap around. So that was one of the hints that I had heard over the years. Now, I have to say right out front here, I am not a seed beater. If you want to learn all about the tips and tricks and all those sort of things, go to somebody like Jill Wiseman and watch her videos. She is fantastic and she knows all of the ins and outs. I just know what works for me, but I am by no means a seed beater. So I just kind of do things my own way. So that's how we're going to roll today. So let's get some of this stuff out of the way. Okay, so now one of the things that can happen with our SuperDuos is, I'm not sure if it's because of the coatings, but you can get some of the holes blocked. So I like to sort of, I call it culling my beads. So I like to look at my beads before I use them. The other thing you can do is you can take your needle and just kind of run it through both holes. See, that hole right there is blocked. And that happens not all of the time. Like, you're not going to have it happen in, like every other one, but you will get the odd one that will be blocked. So if you purchase a kit, we will make sure to give you enough extras. We'll always give you a couple extra to make sure that, if there's anything that's blocked, you can have plenty enough for your project. So that's something that I like to do before I get started, because nothing's more frustrating than trying to put this together and then ending up with, blocked holes on there. So we're going to start off with 111, and I just like to take it with my needle and just poke it like that versus picking it up and trying to find that little hole and doing that. So just use the end. And the same on your SuperDuo. Now these are kind of two-sided in that one side is pink and one side is gold. And I find the best thing on this is to just kind of pick them up randomly, because then it doesn't look quite so uniform. Okay, so we're going to be picking up a total of 6 of each. So I've got one size 11 Miyuki seed bead, and I've got one SuperDuo. So I'm going to pick up another size 11 and another SuperDuo. And I'm going to be just repeating that until I have all of my beads. And I think I have an extra one here, so I'm going to toss that out so I don't put 7. Now, I think you can do this with less and more. I just kind of decided to try something like this with 6. And it worked out nicely for what I was wanting to make. Like, people ask me all the time, well, how do you come up with patterns? Well, often the way that I come up with them is by playing. I just grabbed some SuperDuos and thought, I wonder if I could make a ring of beads with SuperDuos, and that's how it happened. So I'm sure other people have done this before, but this is just kind of the way that I did it. Okay, so I started with one of my seed beads, and I've ended with a SuperDuo. So I've got a total of 6 seed beads and 6 SuperDuos on there. So I'm going to pull that down, and I'm going to leave a few inches on the bottom, maybe like 5 inches. We don't need a lot of fire line on this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn that around, and I'm going to take my needle and go back through the end. So here's the end of my fire line. You can see that there. And I'm just going to come through the back, and I am going to run my needle through every one of those holes that I've already gone through. So it seems a little strange to go backwards, but it does make this work. So you just go backwards like that. And what I'm trying to do is create a little loop. So I'm trying to make sure my fingers aren't in the way so you can see what I'm doing. So now I'm just going to pull that through. And you want to make sure that you're leaving some on the end there so that you can weave that in. So now it does this kind of a thing. So what you have to do now is pick it up and we're going to come to the opposite end again, and I'm going to go back through the first 2. And then when you pull it tight, it creates a little circle. Okay? So that's exactly what we want, something that looks a little bit like a star there. So now I'm coming out of the bottom of this particular SuperDuo here. So now I want to go through the top hole there. So the thread's coming out of this bottom hole, and now I just want to go up to the top hole. So you just bring your thread up to the top, and you won't even see that. It just blends in nicely. So now I'm going to repeat by putting a seed bead in between each one. So I just take a seed bead, and then I go through the next SuperDuo, and then I get another seed bead, and I go through the next open SuperDuo. So it's kind of like you're going on top, you're creating another row on top of what looked kind of like a star there. So it will all come together in a sec. It looks a little strange like this, but it all kind of works. So I'm just going around. Grab another seed bead, go through that hole. These just take minutes to make, which I love because I find seed beading can be really great, but it's hard on my eyes because, like I said before, I have a bit of an eye problem. So I find that anything that's too time consuming for me is just too hard on my eyes. So that's why I love this project, because it just goes together really quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to come through that last SuperDuo there. And then now I just pull it tight, and you see it creates that little loop. And that's exactly what we want. So now this isn't very tight, and so you can see on one side it's a little tighter, and then this side kind of flares out. So to fix that, what we're going to do is we're coming out of this SuperDuo here. So now I'm just going to go all the way around, and I'm going to be pulling as I go through here. So I just went through those first 2, and I gave it a little tug, and I'm going to go through these 2, and I'm going to give it a little tug, and then I go through these 2 and give it just a little tug. Now I'm not pulling super tight. I just want to make sure that it's going to stay nice and snug looking there. Go through that. And I'm just kind of pulling tight as I go along. And I just go by 2s just to kind of, make it go by fast. I'm always trying to find the easiest ways to do things. And I want to sort of end where this one is, so I know now that I can just go over here to this last 2, and I think I want to come out the SuperDuo. I don't know if I want to come out that bead, so I always have to analyze things. Okay, so now we've got our little ring all made there, and it's been reinforced on one side but not on the other. So now what I'm going to do is just come across to the other SuperDuo on the other side, and I'm going to go through that top hole and then the next seed bead. So again, that will just take the thread right across there. And all I'm doing is just crossing over so that I can reinforce it. So I just kind of go through again, each 2, and give it a little pull. So you cannot get much more simple than this, because like I said, I am not a seed beater. I love seed beading, but it's just too hard on my eyes. So I just like to create simple things with seed beads, and this could not be any more simple. So if you're somebody that has never played with any seed beads or SuperDuos, this is the perfect project, and you can kind of run with it and have fun. Okay, so now I can see that my first thread is here, and I'm just coming out of this last one. So what I want to do is go through that right there, and now I have 2 threads in exactly the same space, which is what I want. So now everybody does stuff differently. I see people running their threads through and doing all these fancy knots and all that kind of stuff. But honestly, because I'm not a seed beater, I don't even know what I'm doing. I know that sounds funny. I'm teaching you guys to do something that I don't really know what I'm doing. So if you are a seed beater and you know a better way of tying these things off, go ahead and do that. What I usually like to do is take my needle and I run it under that thread right there. So it just kind of picks up that little thread. You can't even see it. And then we're going to run the needle back through that loop. And that just kind of locks that in there. So then I'm going to repeat and do that again. So I'm just picking up the thread that's in between that seed bead and this SuperDuo. And then you want to make a small loop. If you have this like a really big loop like that and then put it through, that's a great way to create a knot. And once you get a knot in Fireline, it's really hard to get it out. So I just like to make a small little loop, pop it through there, and make that kind of tight. So now I'm going to take my needle off. And again, this was I'm pretty sure if somebody like Jill Wiseman watched this, she'd be like, Kelly, what are you doing? But again, I just create my own thing. I don't follow other people's patterns. I just do my own thing. Okay, so I take that and I just make a knot, because this is just going to go in between the beads, and pull that tight. And then I'm going to do one more and pull that tight. And there we've got our little beaded bead. So now I'm going to take my cutters, and I like to trim these off. Now I know this is again where people do things differently. They like to hide knots, but I just don't have the patience or the eyesight to be able to find the knots to hide them and all that stuff. So I trim them off, and then I take my thread zapper. Now you can see that my poor old thread zapper has been well loved. So the key to a thread zapper, if you're to buy them, is to make sure that you've got fresh batteries in here. Often we will sell these and then customers will say, well, it doesn't work. And that's generally because they found an old battery in the bottom of a drawer. So make sure that you use a new fresh battery on your thread zapper. So all you do is hold down this little knob until the end becomes red. And you probably won't be able to tell, but I can see that the end is quite red now. So what I do is I just take that, hold it on, and you'll watch it just melts that right down. So you see a little bit of smoke, melt it down. And then I kind of push it in, and it just kind of hides inside there, and you can kind of tuck it in. So if you don't have a thread zapper, you could, if you're brave, you could use a lighter, or you could just trim really closely, or you could knot it and pull the knot through a bead. There's many ways of finishing the ends off, but that's just kind of the way that I do it. So now we have our little beaded bead. All right, so now that we've got our little beaded bead, we have to create the rest of the earring. So you're going to get one long piece in your kit. So what I've got here is 6 inches that I've cut in half. So what you want to do is just make sure they're identical. So I just line up the two ends, turn it around, and run it up and make sure that those are pretty close. So I don't really care so much as to how long they are, so they don't have to be like exactly 3 inches, but I do want them to be identical. Otherwise they look a little goofy. So I'm just going to put one aside for now. So I'm going to take my leather and run it through my bead. And then I'm going to take my two ends and match them up so that they are identical. And we're going to take some GS Hypo. All right, so honestly, I would prefer to use Loctite or Super New Glue on this project, but I don't have any at home, so I'm just going to use the GS Hypo. So it will work, but you will find that you're going to have to let it set overnight. You can't just wear these. Where with the Loctite or the Super New Glue, it dries almost instantly. So all I'm doing is on about the first, not even quite a quarter of an inch, I'm just running some glue all around. So I make sure I get on the top and on the front and on the sides and on the back. So I don't want to use a ton of glue, but I want to make sure that I'm putting enough so that I can pop these on and that it'll hold on there. And you may want to keep a little bit of paper towel or something like that in case there's any that sort of seeps out the end. So what I like to do is just kind of push it down. So I'm pushing quite hard, and I just hold on to it. I know you can't see anything because I'm pushing it, but I just like to do that for a few minutes until it, just kind of sets up. So just kind of hold it, and then we're just going to put that aside and let it dry. Okay, so now we've let that dry, we're going to add our ear wire. So you can see that this is a double-sided cord end. So there's two different patterns. So you get to choose which side you want, because this is, it just kind of spins around, so it doesn't really matter which way you want to go on it. So you'll decide which way you're going to go. So I think I'm going to go on this side. So all I'm going to do is just take my ear wire and just pop that through the end. And then I take my pliers and close that up, because you don't want this to fall off, because they're not a very heavy earring, which is exactly what I like. So that's as simple as that is. So the other thing that I like to do is I like to take it and push it upwards like this now. I kind of hold that for a minute and just give it a little bit of a roundness. It doesn't always stay round, but I like the look of a round versus being sort of like, down like here. So I kind of round it up a little bit, and it sort of it'll stay about like that. So I'm just going to finish up the second earring, and then I'm going to show you the other two colorways that I've got. All right, so there you go. There's the completed pairs of earrings. I think these ones are just so adorable. And I always love mixing leather with things because, it is that juxtaposition of the glass against the leather. I think it just looks smashing. So this one here is going to be the purple one. We've got our purple SuperDuos with the pewter seed beads, and then I've got the antique gray and the lighter antique silver metals. And then this is a beautiful blue color with sort of a shimmery bronzy color in it. It's so pretty. And then I've also mixed the pewter Miyuki size 11s with that and the antique gray. And then we've gone to the darker, more of a pewter color, dark pewter color on the metals. And then we've got the gold and pink that we were working with here with the black leather. So as always, these will be available in kit form. To find the kits, you just go into the description box below this video and there'll be a link that will take you to my fully secure website. Or you can just visit www.kelliesbeadboutique.com. So to make our earrings today, we've got about 10 inches of 2mm leather. You don't need quite this much, but we always like to give you a little bit extra in your kit so that you have some flexibility in the sizing. We also have some cord ends to go over top of that, a couple charms, some jump rings, a pair of ear wires, some balled up head pins, 2 4mm fire polish, and some beads that fit over top of the leather. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my leather and match up the ends, and then I'm going to cut that in half. So now I'm going to take one of my head pins and I'm going to place my fire polish bead on top of that. Now I want to do like a messy wrap because I don't want to have a long neck. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to bend it right at the bead. So I don't really have a neck there at all. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and place it right on top. And you can see that I have to bring my pliers on a little bit of an angle just so that I can get in there. And I don't need a very big loop on this, so I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way up. So now I'm going to bring this wire up and over and straight down, and I'm going to open my pliers up, rotate them so they're parallel to the table, give that a little squeeze, and pull that straight to the back. And now I like to look at it, and you can see that this is sort of shifted over to the left, so I'm just going to rotate it until it's sort of sitting up top, so it looks a little bit more like a lollipop there. Now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and go straight over top. Now you can try and do this with your fingers. These are really heavy gauge head pins, but you can sometimes, get it with your fingers if you're strong enough. And what I usually do is sort of start it, and then sometimes I have to switch to my other pliers, but we'll see how far I get on this today. So pull it up and over, and then now I'm going to go back up. So I just did 2 little wraps. I go back up, and that, it's not really a messy wrap per se, but it's more of like a bulky wrap, and I want something that's a little bit different looking. Now I'm going to just trim off the back part, and I always want to make sure that I'm using the flush cutters, or the flush side of the flush cutters, I should say. Give that a little trim. You guys always catch me, not my worst, but it's 8 o'clock in the morning and my brain hasn't quite kicked in, so sometimes I'm trying to get my tongue to match up to my brain and it doesn't always work. All right, so now I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to come in and give that a little crimp down, and that just kind of pushes that burr out of the way, and now we have a nice little wrap there. So I had to swap these out because I forgot that I needed a jump ring that was just a little bit larger for the middle section. So I have 2 small ones and 2 little bit larger. So I'm going to take one of the larger ones, place my chain nose plier on one side and my bent chain nose on the other, and just open it up by twisting this way. You never want to open it that way, it'll break the neck. Now these charms are really great because they have 2 different sides. You can choose the side that you like. I generally choose this side, so that's the one I'm going with today. But when you order your kit, you can do whatever you like with yours. And I'll do the other one. So again, twist open, run it through, and then close it up. And then I kind of jiggle it back and forth to try to get it to lock it right in there. So now we're going to assemble the earrings, and these can't get much simpler than this. So I'm going to take these large hole beads and I'm going to place 3 on. And if you're having trouble getting that in, because sometimes when we cut that it leaves a little bit of a blunt end, you can just trim it off so that it's a little bit of a sharper end, and it should pop in there just a little bit more easily. So I'm going to get 3 of these on there. And then I'm going to place my charm. So the nice thing is that you can make a decision right at the very end. Okay, which side do I want? So today we'll go with that side. And place the last 3 on. And then I'm going to take one of these small jump rings and open that up. So again, place my chain nose pliers on one side, my bent chain nose on the other, and open them up like that. And then I like to find the side that does not have the burr on it. So that's got the burr, so I'm going to flip it over and go with that side. And that's going to go through my other jump ring there. And then it's just going to dangle in the front. It just gives a little bit of an accent. Okay, so now I've got my beads and my embellishment on there. So now I just need to decide how long I actually want to make this. So like I said, I give you lots of leather so that it's a little bit easier to work with and you have some more options. But I think I'm going to start by cutting about 1 inch away, and we'll see if that works. So I just kind of, keep those aside so that you can measure the second pair, or the second part of the pair, I should say. Now these are also two-sided, so you can see that there's different patterns. So if I flip that over, you can see that that one's got a different pattern than that. So you want to make sure when you're putting these on that you decide which pattern that you want. And I usually flip them up so that I'm putting them on the same way. It's very easy to turn them over and not realize. Again, your earrings aren't in the middle of your face, so nobody will notice, but if you're being particular like I like to try to be, make sure that you've got your pattern figured out. So I'm going to pop those on top of there, and then I can just kind of lay it down here and decide if I like that length. And I do really like that length. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my other piece of leather, and I've just sort of got one half made on the side here, but I'm going to just take this leather and I'm going to just kind of measure it before I finish it off. That'll make that a little bit easier for cutting. You sort of have to go backwards a little bit on these earrings. So there we go. I'm just going to cut it right there, and then I know that both of my earrings will be the same size, so I'll come back to that one after. But for now, we're going to just take that, make sure that both of the ends are matching up there. I'm going to take my cord end and place it on top. Now, TierraCast does recommend that you use some pliers that have like the nylon jaws inside them, but I find that I don't have to. If you do have a pair of those and you're worried about scratching these, go ahead and use them. But I just find as long as you're using good quality tools that have been honed nicely on the side and don't have any of the serrated edges, then this works nicely. So I just come right on top of it, give it a good squish, and turn it over, and repeat a couple times. I don't want to squish up top here too much because it will change the shape of it, but I just kind of give it some squishes, making sure that that is in there nice and tight. Then I'm going to open up one of my ear wires just on an angle like that, and then I'm going to run it through the end, and there you go. So I'm going to finish up the other one, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product. So there you go, there's our Free Spirit earrings. I'm loving these little leather earrings. I think they're really fun and they're nice and lightweight, which is really important to me because I don't like heavy earrings. So these ones will be customizable. You'll be able to pick your colors, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy them. If you like this video, please make sure to give me a like, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment because I like to hear from everybody. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do so, and ring the bell icon because that will give you a notification when my videos go live. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.